know it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
Greetings, assisters. We go again. We move. We endure. All things many managers, especially those who didn't own Nico Riley in particular, were telling themselves this weekend after yet another one, which kind of felt like it didn't meet expectations for the vast majority of managers. I think it's fair to say. Nonetheless, we do go again. We do move and we do endure, as the show must very much go on. And with it, I'm joined as always by Sam. You're right, mate. How's it going?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. It's actually quite nice to do an episode of this where the game week's done and dusted again, and we have a little bit of time to think through our moves. And I don't know about you, it's just felt like the Christmas period and coming out of it through January and into February has been a little bit of a chaotic one and quite hard work for the majority of FPL managers. So hopefully we can get back on the front foot again. But we do have another midweek deadline the following week to think about as well. So it's no rest for the wicked, I suppose, but I'm enjoying it still. And yeah, we move, like you say in the intro. As always, we are Who Got the Assist. On today's agenda, we will have a look at our game week updates from game week 27. Do we have to? Yes, we do. Sorry, we'll move through it quickly. We're taking a deeper look at gearing up for the blank game week in 31, building on last week's discussion and highlighting some of the key teams of interest as we move towards the blank from game week 28 all the way through to game week 21, and also discussing the possible mainstream strategy for the chips. Of course, we know not all will be following it, but we're going to discuss our own strategies and maybe highlight a few other ways you might want to play it. And we're going to also take a closer look at the popular midfield picks this week. Obviously, a lot of midfielders on the radar, quite a few being sold, so midfielders need to be discussed at length. Form versus fixtures will also make an appearance where we won't talk about the midfielders in that section because we will have done in the previous section. And we're also not including Thiago this week because it feels like we have done every single week this season. So we're just quite frankly bored of talking about him. 1 week punts, captaincy, tough one this week potentially to talk about later on, and of course wrapping up with our teams where one of us has already pulled the trigger on a couple of moves. So it is Tuesday the 24th of February. It's a relatively free midweek, like I mentioned in the intro there. Tom has pulled a trigger of sorts. Newcastle likely to rotate heavily. In fact, they have rotated quite heavily. I think obviously we did the notes beforehand. Yeah, a few have missed out. They were 6-1 up. I think they scored twice in like opening 5 minutes against Karabag in the home tie. But it is Palace's game, which might be a bit more interesting on the Thursday for those of us who have Crystal Palace assets. In the meantime, Tom, how did we get on in game week 27?
Okay, let's do it then very quickly. Meh, basically. I 42 for me. I pretty much accepted my fate from the outset. No Pedro, no Palmer, no Semenyo. And so it proved really with yet another meek performance by my team. My players, apart from Munoz, who went to centre-back when Palace changed system when Gesson came on, got DEFCON the last minute, got a bonus for 9 points, which was good. But yeah, not the Munoz that I kind of wanted to be buying. So he's already gone, spoilers. And Haaland with the assist and a bonus that he's kind of scraped the next day. Chalobah was on, got 9 DEFCON, which kind of summed up the week a little bit. But yeah, I mean, if Chalobah had got that clean sheet, if Ekatike had scored, that would have really helped. It was really sort of small margins yet again. And I suppose, I'm down to 159k, I think it is. And like 2 kind of fairly bad weeks. But similarly, the punches haven't been sort of, very powerful punches, as it were. They've been sort of little jabs rather than kind of full-on hooks. So it won't take very much for me to get back in top 100k, I don't think. I do feel like my season since kind of a really strong Christmas period has been listing a little bit and needs something to power it forward. And admittedly, I've already made my moves towards that. But yeah, I mean, very, very mid this week, down to 150k or so, as I said. And I had no complaints really, Sam. It was kind of the game week I expected. I was hoping to spike variance and just didn't come. Similar for you?
Yeah, much of a muchness. I think if you will have listened to last week's episode of Who Got the Assist, I was a little bit pessimistic going into this one. I was equally scared of João Pedro, Palmer, Semenyo. I thought getting on the wrong end of big hauls from them could be particularly punishing. I'm actually quite glad that they didn't, or relieved rather, that they didn't hurt as much as I thought they would. Obviously, João Pedro scoring 7, but that was the least of my concerns. Then it really came down to my team and my own performance, as it always does. And again, quite disappointing. I scored, I think, 3 more points than you. So 45, 15k red arrow down to 350k. Munoz did keep the clean sheet, but very lucky to do so. So yeah, I'm not particularly confident in the Crystal Palace defense right now. Elliot Anderson always getting 4 or 5 points. So yeah, he's completely fine. Rice getting 4. Haaland with the only other return. Well, actually, no, that's a lie. Haaland getting an assist and a bonus point from my captaincy. And then the other return in my side was a lovely 3-pointer from Timber, having got a yellow card and brought off on the 57th minute. So despite finally assisting, he still finds a way to do almost nothing for me. So yeah, very
Ryan matched him as well. It's just unbelievable, really.
Yeah. So it is what it is. What can you say? Yeah, it's been poor recently. It does feel like I take one micro step forward, get a tiny green arrow, and then I get like 2 or 3 big red ones on the back of it, and it's just been quite painful over the last few game weeks. But yeah, we carry on. 2 free transfers. We've got blanks and doubles coming, and loads of exciting picks that I am considering bringing in this week. So tune in later to find out which ones I'm going to break. But yeah, all good, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I'm just hoping that the next kind of few weeks are going to make things interesting because we have choices to make. I think people are aware of the teams that are mostly being zeroed in on, like really kind of the proper zoom is being applied to Bournemouth, Brentford, Liverpool. But I think we can kind of broaden it out a little bit with Villa, Fulham, principally probably Harry Wilson, but also kind of Joe Anderson if you don't own him in the mix. Man City have got a very good next 3. We'll talk about Blankitis. I mentioned that last week as well in a bit. And also Man United, who have just a very good run pretty much to the end now, having gotten a lot of their kind of hard games out of the way, guaranteed rest and guaranteed sort of lineups, which is obviously incredible for FPL. The big caveat is that Sam and I are following what we think is going to be the main chip strategy as it currently stands, which was, I think that's wildcard 32, bench boost 33, and free hit 34. Sam did mention that a little bit last week. And now we know not everyone's doing that. So we're going to look at the teams in a bit, look at the players in a bit, more importantly, and try to cater for everyone as far as we possibly can. But just remember that's kind of our situation. And I think that at the moment, nothing's really changed in that regard, has it?
No, not particularly. We'll get more information over the coming game weeks, but the only real movement that's going to happen, well, there are 2 actually. So one will be this Friday where we've got the Champions League draw. The only reason that's relevant is it might give a slightly greater possibility that Man City get knocked out in the next round of the Champions League, and they might therefore have a slightly better or worse chance, depending how you look at it, of not blanking. Then you've also got the FA Cup results, and that next round is also going to give us a bit more information as to which teams are likely to blank and double in 33-34. Now, if for whatever reason we get a load of cup upsets where all of the Championship, League One, League Two teams start taking down the Premier League teams in their respective ties, then we might get a smaller amount of blanks in game week 34 and therefore a smaller amount of doubles in 33, and all of that might affect what the meta or the optimal looking chip strategy might look like. But the only reason that I think we're both really on this quite popular strategy at the moment is because it does look currently quite likely that blank game week 34 is going to be a big blank with 3 to 4 blank fixtures. That's 6 to 8 teams. And the 31 one that basically includes Arsenal, Man City, and Crystal Palace. Some of you probably have Wolves somewhere, but it's not easy to get through. But if you've got a wild card, the next week you can get rid of most of those, bench a couple of them that you've got value tied up in, and then it doesn't leave you with a really tricky move between 33 and 34 without that free hit. Because if you use it in 31, it could mean that 34 is more problematic for you. So that's where we're at the moment. But of course, results could change how big that blank in 34 is. And therefore, that has a knock-on effect to all of our strategies.
It does. And I think the principal one that we're going to talk about today is obviously that 31 blank, which is upcoming. A lot of people are dead ending into, which is a phrase that I actually coined way back in the day. Don't get the recognition for it, but I don't mind. So I think that is why people are zeroing on these teams. Bournemouth with the fairly good run, Sunderland, Brentford, Burnley and Man United. Brentford themselves, Burnley away, Bournemouth away, Wolves at home and Leeds away. And then the third principal one people are looking at is obviously Liverpool, West Ham at home, Wolves away, Spurs at home and Brighton away. And they are 6th, 7th and 9th. Liverpool 6th, Brentford 7th and Bournemouth 9th for Team XG respectively, according to Understat. And I think that sort of lends itself as well, doesn't it, Sam, to looking at their assets, as well as City obviously doing fairly well. They're 3rd, United in 4th, and rounding it up, Villa in 12th, outrunning their XG this year, as per all the memes, and Fulham down in 15th for 33.61, overperforming in fact. But with Fulham principally, that's because they've got their 31 with Burnley at home, but fairly appreciable fixtures, 3 home games and 4, taking in Spurs at home, West Ham at home and Burnley, and a trip to Nottingham Forest. Those are good fixtures. Villa, not as great. Wolves away this Friday deadline. People set your alarms. Chelsea at home, United away, and then West Ham at home in 31. I think that's very much a Rodgers job and nothing else. And then United, middling, I'd say, Sam. Palace at home, Newcastle away, Villa at home and Bournemouth away. But they've got that freshness, which I think is kind of manna from heaven for FPL managers. I mean, that's 3 for City. Leeds away, Forest at home, West Ham away. Those are potentially very dangerous fixtures for a City who are smelling blood when it comes to the title, albeit obviously winning the North London derby yesterday on Sunday was very helpful for us.
Yeah, I mean, I assume you watched that game. I can't say that Arsenal had to do too much to beat Spurs,
No.
but yeah, obviously it's going to be a rejuvenating performance for them, and it's obviously going to give them a massive boost. Out of all of these fixtures, I think the first question I wanted to ask you, Tom, is which team do you think has the best next 4? Because I actually think it's Fulham. 3 home games, Burnley at home in 31, Spurs and West Ham before that, both at home. Forest away is the toughest, I would say. That is a dream. And I think a lot of people are looking at Brentford's thinking that's probably the best one, but only 1 home game in there, and that's against Wolves in 30. Admittedly, the 3 games are great away from home, but having 3 home games for Fulham, I do kind of think that their fixtures are being underestimated a little bit.
I know what you mean. They've just been quite inconsistent this year. I mean, I know that I'm not suggesting that you're doing this, but I know that kind of Sunderland result has definitely kind of caught a lot of attention. But they haven't. They've one of those teams, apart from Harry Wilson, who's obviously playing for his but playing for his next move, I suspect. How many times have we seen a player suddenly turn it on when there's a fantastic intent at the end of the tunnel? Apart from him, I don't think there's that many options there, and it kind of, I don't know, for me. Although I like their fixtures and I'm happy to have Anderson to cover the defensive angle, I don't know. I think that we'll talk about it in a minute, actually, when looking at the midfielders. I think that he's probably the midfielder I would get if I'm fishing in the cheap, in like the mid tier, if that makes sense. For the more expensive teams, I think that we kind of have to look at them on a different level where it's more sort of consistency as a team and kind of more predictability in the results, which is why I kind of preferred Semenyo. And that's why I've kind of gone there, even though there's blank in 31. And that's kind of the immediate thing to think about is how you're going to dead end into that. I've got a plan for that. I can deal with that. So that's fine. I just think those next 3 games for City are very, very good. And you're playing again, you're kind of facing teams that are, yeah, not particularly good defensively. It's the 8th worst defense in Leeds, the 4th worst defense in Forest, and the 2nd worst defense in West Ham. I even though the EO is pretty high, I just felt, I will talk about it a bit more in a minute, but I just felt that I just wanted to get Semenyo in for those games, and potentially, obviously, there's some doubles to come. So yeah, I think I'd tier it basically. I'd kind of cut it into two, where I'd say, depending on the asset and the type of team, of the sort of mid-tier teams, I probably would be inclined to agree with you that Fulham do have the best fixtures, 3 home games in the next 4, and those being teams which are in trouble is very appealing. But of the better teams, I just can't look beyond City, because Liverpool have been a little bit hit and miss as well themselves. I think they were very fortunate this weekend. Villa have been very hit and miss as well. United do keep rolling on, do have that freshness, but I couldn't afford one of them. But I couldn't afford Boomer alongside Bruno, put it that way. But yeah, that's my answer. Cheap for more mid teams, Fulham. For more expensive teams, I think that even though they're maybe missing game of 31, the next 3 for City shouldn't be ignored right now.
Yeah, I think the other thing to maybe mention about Fulham versus Brentford as who's got the best fixtures is, admittedly, maybe this game week, if you need to make the transfer now, Brentford become more tempting because they've immediately got the Burnley game. Whereas if you've then got another midfielder, let's say Declan Rice and Enzo Fernandez, if you get rid of one of them today, then maybe Brentford are the more popular picks this week. But by the time you get to game week 31, you can hold on to Rice for a couple more weeks and just buy Wilson for the Burnley game. So that's one little asterisk I thought I'd add. The other thing that I think we should mention before we move on is, obviously, you've bought Semenyo. A lot of people are looking at either Semenyo, O'Reilly. I'm sure there are other Man City options that are being bought by people. Could you explain and describe your situation as to why you feel that you're able to compensate or get through, game week 31 without having to worry about buying those now? And at what point would you say it's not worth taking that leap of faith? Like how many issues would you have, or would you be comfortable playing with just 10 men in game week 31, for instance, or taking a hit to get to 11 if you bought Semenyo or Nico O'Reilly now?
Sure. So overall, the way it kind of stands is that I've got 9 playing players in 31, and you've got, was it 4 free transfers you've got until then, or was it 3?
Me personally, or
no, just like if you rolled every week from now, I think you get to 3, don't you?
28, 29, 30, 31, 4.
And that, okay, well, that's more than enough because of how I've landed. Like I've had Anderson since wildcard in game week 6. I'm keeping Chalobah around. I've got Chow who's sticking around. I think that principally because I've said this a couple of times already, but because I have Raya, I have an extra kind of slot on my bench that other people don't have. I don't have. Exactly. That was a move that I didn't need to make. So that kind of meant that I had one extra move that I could possibly make in terms of picking up a blank friend, of kind of a blank unfriendly player. Albeit this week I have sold Munoz to facilitate the Semenyo move. So it kind of evens itself out and puts me in the same position. I do lose a free transfer, as in I don't have to take a hit. But if I went for Verts, Dango, something like that, or Bumo, indeed, I would have only to make one transfer that week. But I think the upside from the next 3 weeks is good enough that I thought I could go with Semenyo. But if you are in a situation where you're looking at a hit, depending on your sort of appetite for taking hits, this year I'm fairly keen to not take a hit, which is very unusual for me. But I've come so far now, Sam. I'm going to try to kind of adhere to that. I know that you're kind of looking at one potentially this week, but for me, I'm going to try to comply by that. But if you're looking at kind of for no spite your face, effectively buying another blanker this week, and you get to 31, you've got kind of 8 or 9, and you need to take -4 to get to 11. I wouldn't mind going into that week with 10, because it's just the fixture list that week isn't great. It's like the kind of the key draw is that Fulham game at home to Burnley, who, as we've seen, actually do goals and are playing with that freedom of knowing they're relegated. That narrative, Sam, must really kind of grind everyone's gears a little bit now. And there's no other kind of real standout. Like I'm sure kind of the headline is probably going to be Bruno Fernandes at home away to Bournemouth, which is where the captaincy is going to go for most people. But other than that, it's not a fantastic group of fixtures. So if you if you think that, right, okay, I'm going to buy a player like Semenyo, I'm convinced I'm going to buy Semenyo, I'll give you the case for him later on. I'm going to buy Semenyo. I'm just, I really fancy him over the next 3. That means I'm going to have to play a 10, or I've got to take it's -4, which is fine in the blank, because at the end of the day, it's basically -2 if you're buying a playing player. Then I think that that's probably all right. If it means that you're kind of looking at kind of 7 blankers or less, then 7 players in the blank or less, then I think that that's the time you look elsewhere. I think there's a rank element as well in the Sam too. So we're picking on Semenyo a bit. The other thing to bear in mind with Semenyo is that he's very highly owned, right? I think he was nudging 50% effective ownership for me this week in the top 200k. And if you got that could be an opportunity for some people to look at it and say, right, okay, I'm going to take that on and go with one of these other players that we've mentioned in those kind of midfield slots. Now, I'm taking the opposite bet, obviously, that people aren't going to be going there. But yeah, so basically, I'm in a good situation. I'm in a decent situation because I own Raya. I've got an extra bench spot, and I can manage it. Despite having no free transfers left, I can still manage it in 31. Like 31 is still a substantial amount of time away that I can manage that situation effectively.
Yeah. It is worth noting that obviously injuries and suspensions can happen. So if you're listening out there and you think, oh, it's all safe, do tread carefully. But your logic makes absolute sense. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone listening in could hear that logic in full as well. And I think that's also a really good opportunity. We've talked about Semenyo, mentioned a couple of other midfielders in that section as well, to pivot across to the midfield matrix this week. Obviously, Semenyo features, Wilson features, Rodgers. Then we've also got Mbermo, Verts, Dango is referenced. We will also talk about Sharda. And then we've got, I think that's Ryan in the bottom left. We will also talk about Tav as well. There are lots of midfielders on the radar. You've obviously made your bed with Semenyo. If he wasn't an option, or you had maybe a few less transfers or a few more blank players at the moment, is there any particular player here that would be catching your eye instantly straight off the bat that we want to talk about first?
So I think it's because we're focusing on midfielders. It kind of, I think there's some people, it's a bit of a compound move is a point I think we should make at the outset. So people are selling Enzo, looking to move on Palmer, which obviously is money no object if you are doing that. Perhaps Rice as well. But there's also players in the defence people are moving on. Like Van Dijk is very popular this week, and moving on Chalobah, Munoz. And I think that if Semenyo wasn't kind of where I decided to hang my hat, then I think that I'd be looking more at a player around sort of the Dango and Ryan range, who I could then use to move the defender to Van Dijk. But as it is, I kind of think that I want to bet on the midfielder and the ceiling being more exciting from a team which is consistently in with decent team XG, than to go for a defender from a team who, yes, have got a couple of clean sheets, and yes, you got an assist last week, but have not looked convincing to the eye. But that is entirely subjective, of course. That's just kind of the calculation that I've made. If I'm going for a cheaper player, I think that I would be. I mean, Ryan's just so exciting, Sam. Did you see him on Saturday night? Like I had a few beers by then because of how bad the Saturday was going. Watched that game, I was like, blimey, this guy's awesome. Like it's just as I said, it's like watching a football manager, one of these sort of football manager kind of wonder kids. When you play them, you're instantly adding them to shortlist and scouting them. And yeah, I mean, I'm not against. So I mean, I still own Rice. I'm not against sort of thinking, well, if it doesn't go well against Chelsea, maybe I just get him in as well, because I think he's awesome. But he's very much a vibes pick, if you see what I mean. Dango's more the underlying data, known quantity, haulable sort of individual who's on the list for me. But I don't know. I think the Dev and me would probably want to go with Ryan. That's because I think Wilson comes in 31 for me as it stands. I do like Wilson as well. I'd just be very tempted to kind of, if I was punting around that sort of 5-point-X territory, I'd be very tempted to go for the Uber differential as it is, try to counterbalance the fact I'll be buying a fairly sort of chalk defender, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, it does. And I think, like you said earlier, it is important to caveat that there are almost two pools of midfielder that we're all shopping for at the moment. There's the upper price ones, that is Semenyo and Burmo, Verts. Rogers probably sneaks in there as the upper price as well. Then you've got the lower end. You've got the bargain basement of Wilson, Ryan, Tav, Dango Otara. You might put Sharda somewhere in the middle at 6.9. We can talk about him as well. But I think maybe if we split it up to begin with, between Semenyo and Burmo, Verts, the more expensive picks. Obviously, you've gone with Semenyo because you're able to. And Burmo and Verts are the two that are really playing on my mind this week. And honestly, I would have probably made my moves by now and taken a -4 to do so if it wasn't for what happened on... Was it Sunday Liverpool play? It was Sunday, wasn't it? It was Super Sunday against Forest.
The 2 p.m s, wasn't it?
The 2 p.m s, yeah. So Verts getting withdrawn from the match day squad at the last minute completely ruined my plans for this week, because I had the exact money in the bank to do Rice, Enzo, and Munoz to Verts and Burmo, Van Dijk. And I loved the sound of that move. But as soon as Verts was a doubt, there is just no way I could make that move. And of course, overnight, Enzo went down. I think Van Dijk went up, and it made me 0.2 short. So it's given me a little bit of a problem to think through. And of course, there's no guarantee that Verts is even going to be fit come the weekend. And Burmo as well also went off early, seemingly with some sort of issue. It looks like it was just cramp. I don't know if you've heard anything more on that.
No.
But both midfielders I wanted to ideally target this week, and honestly, getting both of them I think will be an incredibly powerful differential if both of them are fit. Given the data that they're putting up, the teams that they're playing in with very good underlying data themselves, I would prefer to have both of them over any of the cheap ones. That's just me, but I really like the sound of that. As it is, though, there are doubts surrounding both of them. Out of the two, and Burmo and Verts, I think I can guess which way you would go. But if Verts was cleared fit and Burmo the same, do you have a preference on which one you would be going towards first?
It is purely because of the next two that I'd be slightly leaning towards Verts. The problem is, for both of them, is the midweek in 29. If both of them are carrying some sort of issue, I mean, you need that press. You need those press conferences to be properly, and maybe we'll come back to it when we look at your team later on, if you can do some sort of phased maneuver. But you need those press conferences to be like clean bill of health, emphatically, this player is absolutely fine. I think that you're likeliest to get it with Bumo, or likeliest to kind of feel that reassurance with Bumo. I suppose there's a bit of an issue with Sesko as well, also scoring again, and Bumo being currently the starting 9 for Man United. Versus fixtures are better. It's just both carry, but I would be in a vacuum probably ushering you very slightly towards Verts, because Liverpool fixtures are just that tiny bit better. When does Champions League kick in? Around between game between 9 and 30.
Yes.
Okay.
Not sure.
Yeah. Whereas if you're kind of thinking, well, if I'm getting Bumo in now, maybe Verts is kind of represents a more sort of short-term pick, whereas Bumo's a longer one. But we're going to be wildcarding soon anyway. So yeah, it kind of becomes an operation of kind of, right, what are the next 4 fixtures? Which one do I narrowly prefer? Probably narrowly prefer Verts, but a wise man once told me that he much prefers goal scorers over assisters. And if that wise man, aka you, is correct, then surely kind of then we start looking at the player who's 8th overall for non-pen XGI this year, who is Bumo. With Verts, yes, getting better, that's for sure. But a lot of his sort of points potential does come from assists too. Although, yeah, I appreciate that Bumo's got 2 assists in 2.
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer to my own question, if I was able to answer it, would be both. Just get both if you can, because although Verts is more leaning to, his goal threat's not bad. In fact, it is slightly more than his assist threat so far this season. And he is picking up shots in the box all of a sudden as well, which is an interesting new aspect to his game this year. But even if it was more leaning towards the assist threat, he is very good on the bonus points. Any sort of attacking return, he is picking up bonus points with those. So although I do historically prefer the goal scorer, Mbermo misses quite a lot of chances, and he's not like, if you look at the bonus point system for the Everton game, for instance, I think he had like 19 touches of the ball, lost possession several times, missed a couple of bigger chances. And it did mean that even though he assisted the winning goal, he still didn't get any bonus points. So I think they're very, very close. If I got complete confirmation that Wirtz was fine, I think I'd ever so slightly favour him. But if I was able to go with both, I probably still would. Then we get to the cheaper options, because obviously getting both of those players is not an option for most managers. Then you're looking at Wilson, Dango, Ryan, and Tav. Your vibes are with Ryan, it seems. I love the vibes on Ryan as well. I must admit, he's just such a good player. I'm really excited.
We've got to
that
say
one
that
driving run against West Ham is it was incredible. Anyway. Moving beyond that,
you've got to say that, haven't you? That like with the cheaper seats, the sensible pick. Yes, the vibes are with Ryan, but if I'm there and someone's kind of holding a gun to my head and saying which player is your life depends on it, who's going to score the most over the next 4, it's going to be Harry Wilson. I think that's going to be the one who's going to be playing. A few good points in the chat about Ryan being fairly young, David Brooks and things like that coming in and kind of taking minutes off him. I don't think Tavernier will do that, because it's a slightly different position. I think Tavernier is more kind of central, but yeah, I completely can see that. I do think that.
Well, knock-on effect of other players moving around, like it's a bit of a jigsaw puzzle in that place, as like at Bournemouth even. So I think just the amount of options they've got would just make me a little worried. I still, for what it's worth, think he will continue to start and be fine, but it's just that tiniest little flicker of risk. I would also say the same thing of the Brentford wide forwards, so Dango and Sharda as well. Andrews is a fan of Lewis Potter. He does like him. So it isn't completely out of the realms of possibility that one of Dango or Sharda doesn't start all of the next 4 games, especially given the quick turnaround between 28-29, and that Lewis Potter also gets minutes from the start in one of those 2 positions at some point. I do think Dango is a very tempting buy this week, though, because you do have that carrot of the Burnley game, and a lot of managers will just already default to Thiago anyway. So if you want a real benefit from such a nice match, then yeah, it does make sense. And as you referenced earlier, their XG so far this season as a team is about 1.5 short of Liverpool. It's very, very good. And I think United up in 4th and City up in 3rd are only 4 or 5 XG more than Brentford so far this season. So they do create a lot. And Dango is the chief penalty winner. So if you've got Dango and Thiago and he wins a penalty, you are absolutely loving life. So there's an element of like maybe maximizing your upside by going with Dango and doubling up there. But I do agree that if I really had to like bet my life on one player just like churning out points over the next 4, and given what I said at the start of this section about the fixtures, I think it probably is Harry Wilson. It's just this week in particular, I think the Brentford boys are probably slightly stronger now. Harry Wilson grows in value over the next few.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that to kind of touch on a very interesting point here, which is definitely kind of underlying a lot of the discussion, which is about picking up the talisman versus kind of doubling up. So do you hedge your bets or do you go all in? And I think that that's a really interesting kind of tidbit, which kind of adds to the kind of decision-making process, because with Wilson, he is I know that obviously Jimenez was the man against Sunderland, but his minutes are being sat by Muniz, whereas Wilson does seem to, it's his best ever return in the Premier League, I think, this year.
Yes,
probably, yeah, easily by a country mile, adding set pieces and things like that. And I can see a lot of people kind of thinking, well, I already own Thiago, so that maybe diminishes Dango's case and makes me want to look elsewhere. I mean, if it's in my case with Semenyo, for example, I just kind of felt, well, I'm not really too bothered about doubling up on the City attack, but you don't really think about it that way when you're kind of buying extra premiums if you've got the space to do so. Similar to, if I did have another spot for Verts open, and he was fit and all the sort of context was shorn away, I'm absolutely fine with doing that. I think what's interesting in the cheaper mid, Sam, is kind of how people judge that sort of equilibrium between, am I buying the talisman or am I buying sort of, the beta player who is going to be adding in to kind of, you're hoping for kind of synergy between two of them, aren't you? Clearly, I've just been doing a meeting at work a few hours ago, and I'm still in that headspace. But you kind of think
they circle back and all of that.
Yeah. So circling back to these cheap cheap mids, and which ones do you place more? Obviously, kind of it depends, but in this scenario right now, would your main aim be to go for the talisman, or would you be looking to double up? I think for me, because of the years doing talisman theory, my kind of inclination is to always go for the talisman where I can. So if I only had space for a cheap mid, I think that I would. Yes, okay, the vibes with Ryan, but I think that, ultimately, when I really thought about it, obviously it's Tuesday, I can say whatever I want now. But when it came to shove on kind of Friday and I was making the decision, I think it would always be Wilson who'd end up on the confirm screen.
I kind of agree. And maybe it's just the way we play the game. I don't know. But I there's just something about doubling up on Brentford after seeing what they did against Brighton as well doesn't help. Maybe that's playing on my mind a little bit too much, actually, to be fair. That's a little bias that I need to be conscious of. But spreading the risk a little bit. And also, in a head-to-head, I do kind of think that Harry Wilson has the beating of any of the Brentford or Bournemouth players, generally speaking, especially given the fixtures. I'm struggling with this one because I think it's a decision I'm going to have to make by Friday. Because I doubt, in fact, tonight I think Mbeumo's going up, which would lock me out of another move to get to just Mbeumo and Verts. I'd forgo the Van Dijk one. We'll talk about it later. But it does look likely that I'll need one of the cheaper midfielders, and I am quite torn. And I could easily change my mind in the next few days. But right now, if someone forced me to make the move, there is something in the back of my head that's saying Harry Wilson right now at Fulham is the guy. He's playing for either a contract or a move, which is one of those intangible benefits that players often overperform for a little bit. And it's very unscientific, but we do see it quite often. The fixtures are just really nice as well. And I do wonder if people will maybe avoid him or maybe look towards other picks that haven't been popular earlier on in the season, because it's kind of an element of, been there, done that. Let's look for the next exciting thing. I think he could be the next exciting thing. His minutes are good. The data's not bad. He's on set pieces. And the way the Fulham players talk about him as well, I think Iwobi, when Wilson set him up over the weekend, I mean, Iwobi was like, I'm shocked he didn't take that on himself. And usually he puts it in. So I'm just grateful that he gave me the ball. That to me does sound like a player who's very much the team's talisman. So yeah, I think right now I'd be slightly veering towards Wilson, but admittedly the immediate fixture right now does make it very tempting to go with the Brentford boys.
Yeah. And it's a really good point as well about how these players, the shine almost comes off them when they've had their moment in the sun and they've kind of gone out a little bit for a while. I mean, Wilson's still, I think last week he was around sort of 15% EO, my mark, because when I saw he got that last minute assist and got the bonus, so and he also got the DEFCON in the first half, I was just like, no, this is terrible. I mean, I looked at and I was just like, okay, because I think I sold him at like 6.1 or something like that. So it's not the case that he has been popular, but it's not the case that he's got that sort of, I suppose, dead ownership, which kind of forms the sort of critical mass underneath his effective ownership. Unlike Semenyo, where I think there's still quite a lot of kind of dead or under-engaged teams that still have him in from the Bournemouth days.
Very much so.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't. Yeah, it's a really good point about him not getting too caught up in he was the future once sort of thing. God, I don't want to reference David Cameron ever again in my life. Right.
realise you did that.
There is one player we haven't mentioned who's on this matrix, who's Morgan Rogers, who I think every week I'm sure I see at least one post. Oh, why is no one talking about Morgan Rogers anymore? Said, I think I responded to one last week. It was just like, well, I think most people who are looking to own him already own him, and he's just there because he kind of just exists in my team, and I don't really think about it anymore. I think you said something very similar last week.
Exactly the same, yeah.
But we still need to kind of address the Morgan in the room, which is if you are, okay, he kind of exists almost. I think he's probably more in with the Semenyo, Bumo, and Verts side of this. But if you are looking to buy him in now, would you? Sorry, if you're looking for a midfielder buy now, does he kind of shoot to the top of the list for you, or is he someone who is in contention rather than an automatic pick? I don't know. They've been unconvincing, haven't they, Villa?
They have. And put it this way, as an owner, I'm not worried about owning him in any way whatsoever. He'll tick along. He'll score points the weeks that I probably don't expect him to, blank in the weeks that I do. He will just tick along. We know this from 2 seasons worth of data. He's an absolutely fine FPL pick, and he's still got decent enough fixtures over the next 4, including a good home fixture in the blank. That being said, if you don't own him now, I would say there are better options, very slightly more expensive than him, with much better attacking data, with better fixtures, looking at Verts and Mbermo and Semenyo, arguably, if you can navigate the blank. And then you've also got a number of picks 1.5 to 2 million cheaper than him that are also putting up similar / better data on more set pieces in a few cases and have better fixtures. So I think the time to buy him, I wouldn't say it's completely been and gone, because he's never a bad player to buy, because he will get 90 minutes, he will tick along. But I think if I was buying fresh now, I'd look elsewhere, by either more expensive or cheaper. I think either route is fine, and you can find picks that I would back to beat him over the next 4 game weeks. With all of that in mind, I would not in a million years be selling him right now, because the fixtures are still good enough and he will tick along. I just wouldn't rush to be buying him. And I think that is why no one's really talking about him, because he's not top of the shopping list for anyone, but he's also not really on the chopping block for anyone who owns him. He's just, like you said, there. Like, he's just there, and that's it.
Yes, indeed. A few alts as well, just to talk through. So for Verts, you've got Szoboszlai, who has been moonlighting as a right back. They've been unable to find a fit one there. Do you find it interesting? I'm sure Curtis Jones has played there every now and again. I found that interesting that I didn't swap him over at any point. Dango, you've got more expensive Sade, a smooth operator, on the other side of the pitch, and Tavernier, who's coming back to fitness. Obviously, one of those players who was on both of our radars, on set piece, on penalties. Now that Semenyo is gone, maybe Tavernier. I think he played 10 minutes in the game this weekend.
If he played a bit more, I'd be interested, but the tight turnaround's a killer.
I wonder if Sade is now back on the menu a little bit because of how Brentford against Bournemouth. And Szoboszlai, I think, he has been Liverpool's best player this year. So, I mean, more players, I guess, in that sort of mid bracket. I know Szoboszlai is a tiny bit more. Szoboszlai and Sharda actually are both a tiny bit more expensive than Dango, Ryan, and Tavernier, but still, nonetheless, players as well who might do a job for some people. I know you had, for example, your time with Szoboszlai, which wasn't the most exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it ended with a flourish, goal and assist. Was it against Bournemouth? I think they lost that game, but yeah, it ended well at least. But a penalty miss in there. And admittedly, the only real reason that he ended up being a standout pick for me was because Salah was away and Szoboszlai was on penalties. That is no longer the case. And at 6.8 million, I think it is fine to go there. I think if you want a slice of Liverpool and Verts is injured, then it probably does make Szoboszlai a little bit more appealing, because he might play in that more advanced creative role that Verts more often than not occupies at the moment. But I think if Verts is fit, and maybe we get negative news on Frimpong, for example, and he's not quite ready yet, then him playing at right back does limit him in open play. He'll still have the set pieces, but you are very reliant on an absolute screamer from him. And he's got it in his locker. He's done it several times this season. But you are very reliant on very minimal moments in a match. Whereas with a lot, it doesn't take much, and they will have 4 create a big chance or get themselves a big chance per match. With Szoboszlai, those moments do feel a little bit more thinly. So I don't think he's a bad option at all at 6.8 million. But I don't know if I'd have him ahead of any of these options. I don't know. What do you think?
Either. I mean, I think that, as you say, I don't know why, but my brain immediately went to James Ward-Prowse. So he was when he was at Southampton.
I like that
you know,
reference.
you look at those goals and assists come from, as you say, those moments. But those moments can, as you've had in your own kind of personal history, have one week an incredible impact at TK I like, and you kind of just want one. I think Slovo is decent, and I think, you know, if you look at a player like Sade around that sort of price, really for a lot of FPL analytics managers, and that he'll always be in the discussion. And I think that he's more his kind of haul ability, because he does have hat tricks in his locker, and I think that, you know, people ask, is it a crime that he is kind of a player who is kind of consistently pushed by analytics? And I don't think it is, because he does have the underlying data when he is in the team to kind of to underpin that. And I think that Brentford's losing to Brighton, him coming on the half time, may mean that he actually does come through as being actually quite a good option at that sort of mid-range price, if we're saying that Ryan and Dango are cheaper. I don't know. I don't know, Sam. I kind of feel like it. Right, let's do some preferences. So, in the more expensive picks, I'm obviously kind of 8 million plus. Actually, no, including Rodgers, so 7.7 million plus. I probably am. I've obviously made my bed and bought Semenyo, but I own Rodgers as well. If I was buying one or the other, I probably would still opt for Semenyo. For you, I suppose it's between Bumo and Wirtz for separate reasons.
Yeah, I think if both are fit, I would very slightly favour Wirtz right now, given the fixtures, but it's marginal. And if there were any doubt over Wirtz, then I'd probably just be looking at Mbermo instead. So I don't think there's much in between the two of them. But in my situation, I do prefer both of them over Semenyo personally.
And then in the cheap seats, marginally, I think it would have to be I think it would have to be Harry Wilson, despite my kind of love of the vibes of Ryan, and Dango's still okay, but I think it'd have to be Wilson, wouldn't it?
I think so at the moment, but come back to me later on in the week to see where I end up on. But yeah, Wilson is currently edging it for me ever so slightly, and then maybe Dango in second. But yeah, all 3 teams have good options there. I think pick your poison. It does feel like a little bit of a coin flip between the lot of them.
Cool. All right, a couple of others just to mention. Somerville could be quite an interesting sort of one. Next few games, West Ham aren't great, but a lot of counter-attack potential. And we'll come back to it. But Anton Stack at 4.7, and now he's back fit. On those free kicks. Oh, what a free kick that was! Honestly, it's just so clever. If you saw it, just puts his hand up as if he's kind of crossing it in, shoots it into the opposite corner, like completely wrong foot. Martinez, like brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I love him from a fancy Bundesliga as well. Loves a bit of DEFCON. 4.7. I think he's going to end up being kind of the premium, the top. Really interesting for me for 31 as well. But yeah, I think that bit. Looking at these midfielders who are all in the mix. Hopefully that was kind of vaguely useful. Just to mop up a few of the Kelleher and goal. So the only reason this is in, because I mentioned that people are moving on the likes of Enzo, Palmer, Rice, etc. Maybe some people are looking to free up cash at the back. So Raya at the very back. So Raya, Sanchez need to free up money. They're all a bit rubbish to goalkeepers this year. That's not like it. Instead of swapping out to Hill, moving Kelleher to moving Raya to Kelleher, but I opted against that. And there is an argument defensive asset, because the rest of them got question marks over them, and he loves a Pense, doesn't he?
He loves a pen save. I'm a big fan. I've had him for a while. It is tough to ever tell yourself a goalkeeper transfer because the upside is rarely that high. But if you're looking for a Brentford defender right now, it is quite tough to know which one is absolutely nailed. Eger looks, Vandenberg and Collins and Coyote's coming back in as well. Like, there are just so many options. It's quite hard to know for sure exactly who is going to start the next 4 game weeks other than Kelleher. And Kelleher will start the next 4, barring some sort of crazy injury. And he does get saves, and he does also love a pen save. So you might spike a haul. It's unlikely, but pen saves are always unlikely. And if anyone's going to make one, it seems he is up there as one of the best in the business. So good fixtures, good price, good save data. Yeah, if you are making a transfer in goal, I would highly recommend bringing him in.
Perfect. Yeah, I think I just like at this point, like you're looking at Petrovic, probably not. And of the other teams that we've sort of looked at there, are you buying Martinez? Probably not. Leno, 5 million, no, off the table. Alisson's got bonus last couple of games because Liverpool have been so leaky. He's on loads of saves, but I mean, it's not going to save you anything to be going there. And Lemon at United, none of it particularly make. I just think if you're going to make a goalkeeper move now, if you're moving off Araya or Sanchez, you either just leave them there, which I think is probably more acceptable. Unless it's got to be kind of the lowest priority. Next up, James Hill. Mentioned him last week. Reference that he'd be here again, but cheapy in the mix. Happily in my team now. Bought him at 4.0. He's now up to 4.1. Equal second for DEFCON over the last 6 weeks, behind Chalobah, who got 10. So 4 out of 6 DEFCON qualify. Oh, no. He hit DEFCON 4 times out of the last 6.
Threshold. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah. People moving on Chalobah. I moved on Munoz. Absolutely fine with him, performing fine and good for DEFCON, even if Bournemouth are distinctively mid for defensive data this year. Very fortunate with their clean sheet against West Ham this weekend. It's the highlights and the stats is to be believed. Speaking of stats, Sam, maybe a quirk of understat, who we are forced to use these days, RIP FB ref. But I know that Bournemouth, they've got Bournemouth down as having the second best defence at home, actually, which is where the next 2 games are.
It's a strange one. They've figured it out at home. They can't figure out away from home. It's got to be a tactic because it's just so weird that the data is so different away and home. But they've got 3 home games in the next 4, and they're not bad home games. They're like Man United at home in 31's not great, but you could see a clean sheet or 2 in that next batch. So yeah, at 4.1 million, you can't really go wrong as long as he keeps starting and hits DEFCON in about 3/4, maybe 2/3 of the matches. You're looking pretty good. He might even get you lucky with an assist in there as well. He is overperforming on that, so who knows? I mean, what more can you say? He's cheap, he's cheerful, and he will solve a problem in your back line for game week 31 as well. So yeah, if you're selling Chalobah, you can't get to Van Dijk, and or it means that you can afford other great things in your team by going cheaper, then Hill looks like the very, very obvious solution now.
Yeah, obviously I don't mind it at all. I think it's obviously the best cheap player in the game at the moment. Obviously going forward, that will probably the baton probably pass to Rodon or Goodmanson over at Leeds, but at the moment I think he's probably fine. Mid range, in fact, 2 defenders, the 2 we'll speak about now, are the top bought players this week. Mid-range is Nico O'Reilly, formerly of my team. It's the irony that I sold him for Chalobah has not been lost on me. And I don't know, I feel like 300,000 chances in for O'Reilly, obviously now out of position and super interesting as a pick. I kind of feel like unless you've actively bought him, he's the latest example of this almost being the season of differential by mistake. That, I sold him when he was like questionable whether he'd be starting. It was being rotated with Ryan at Nori, and then suddenly now he's turned into the box crashing supreme, like the kind of deluxe Enzo out of nowhere, which is great. I mean, the underlying data is okay for a defender in top 60, and watching how City play, like he's the guy who's doing that role. Like incredible stuff, really incredible stuff. is he one people should be thinking about? Yes, there's a blank in kind of 31 as per Semenyo, but 5 million, surely in the circle of trust now, maybe a pick.
I love the word you say, surely, there. I mean, it's a Man City player playing in midfield where they've got a lot of options. How many times do I need to say it? But all of that being said, he has been fantastic this season. And it does look like they found him a role that really works for him, gets him into those advanced areas. And he's got a pretty decent finish on him as well, to be fair. He took the header really well. Yeah, I mean, at 5 million, what's not to love, other than the fact that you do just need to make sure that you're well enough equipped to deal with the blank in 31. I think if you can get to him and not give yourself an issue in 31, then I'd recommend doing so. But most managers at this point probably can't, because a lot of us already have double or triple Arsenal, and then 1 or 2 Man City, maybe a couple of Crystal Palace in there, dotted around our different teams as well. It's quite difficult to then also bring in O'Reilly. But if you've got the spot, I would recommend going there, because the next 3 look like good fixtures. If you can bench him for 31, or maybe you've got the free transfers spare to move him on, or if you are indeed free hitting that week, then he's perfect. I would highly recommend buying him. But that is it's not a massive pool of managers who are able and in that position to do so right now.
Yeah. I like what he sort of encapsulates more than anything else, in terms of what I said about it being a bit of a season of, if you hold a player, like, as I found with Thiago, and people with O'Reilly have found that suddenly they suddenly become just incredible. And the same is probably true of Van Dijk, actually, who's the second most bought in player this week. He's about 40,000 transfers off O'Reilly, the big ticket defender. Only 4 DEFCON points in the last 6. I think it's fair to say it was a fortunate assist. And I think it's also fair to say that Liverpool have been fortunate to keep their cleanies over the last couple of games against Sunderland and Forest. But it's still a fair bargain. You know, next 2 are good. He's going to play those games regardless. And I don't know, as I said to you earlier on, if I was looking to go, if I decided that I was going to go for the cheaper mid combo with Van Dijk, then I would have kind of had no issues with doing that. But I just don't know. I know the last 2 games he's got double-digit hauls, but I don't think the upside is kind of as predictable as those last 2 games would make out. Put it that way. But I'm not disparaging Van Dijk as a pick at all. I think that's absolutely fine if that's where you want to go. And in fact, I'm probably going to have a few concerns this week, because I don't own him, and I'm sure those people will end up being kind of Van Dijk owners, or those who have kept him have again profited from kind of just having him and him kind of doing a great job for you. Yeah, I mean, a player who at the start of the season we both said was a player that we might envision owning the whole year. I don't think either of us have actually owned him this year, have we?
No, it's funny how things work out, isn't it? But yeah, they got off to a bit of a rocky start defensively. He wasn't hitting DEFCON as often as we thought he might to begin with, but that's improved generally across the season. He's averaging 9 DEFCON, or 9.5 DEFCON per 90. This is not bad. He's pretty close to the threshold week on week. Decent underlying attacking data for a centre back. Obviously, we know he's good in the air from set pieces, and they've got good fixtures over the next 4, as we've already talked about. So whilst he's on the more expensive side, a lot of us do have quite expensive defenders we are looking at getting rid of either this week or over the next few. So naturally, our eyes turn to another player who's around that price point, with all of those different little routes to points, DEFCON included. And of course, someone like Timber is talked about quite a lot this week as a potential sell for someone like Van Dijk. It does make sense. I can see why people are doing it, because I can see a couple of clean sheets in the next 4, and of course they don't have the blank in 31 either. So it's just whether, I guess the question is it worth the extra 1.9 over Hill? Because Hill is proving to be very good value for money right now, and I don't want to just be kind of distracted by the price and say, oh, Van Dijk must be the way better pick because he's 6 million and playing for Liverpool. When actually, if Hill does pick up DEFCON in all of these next 4 fixtures and maybe get a clean sheet or 2, how far is he actually going to realistically be off of Van Dijk? Probably not that far. So it is something worth considering. That being said, I spoke about it earlier on. I am pretty bullish on Van Dijk, and given that I had the money to buy him, it was something I was highly considering, because I do think he will continue to get points.
Yeah, I mean, there is probably if I didn't have this sort of abstinence thing going on, I could afford to sell Chalobah for Van Dijk this week. But yeah, you're kind of nom confirmation bias a little bit there, Sam, with my kind of eventual feeling about why I'm fine with Hill and playing him over the next few, because Hill would have to drop to the bench and Van Dijk would have to play if I did make that move. So yeah. All right, final one here. As Sam mentioned right at the top, no Thiago. Can't be asked to talk about him anymore. You all know what he's there for, what he does. If you want to cover him with Dango or Sharda, fair enough. Ekatike, I think just kind of worth throwing in here. Next few are great. He's anonymous last three, despite clocking up some really good data. For example, he's comfortably top of the non-pen XG for the last 10 game weeks, Sam. Sixth overall for non-pen XGI this year. Obviously, he's the next one, and there was kind of the occasion a few weeks back against Newcastle where it looked like I'd kind of hit a vein of gold with him, hit the mother load when he scored the 13 points against Newcastle after a sea of blanks, but then he kind of seems to have reversed to type. Playing a lot more minutes potentially than anybody ever anticipated. I suspect, if Izzat was around, then those minutes would be diminished. But as it is, pretty nailed for minutes and good fixtures to come against dodgy defences. I suppose it's very much a formation question with Ekatike more than anything else, isn't it? And Vert's not being fit does mean that Liverpool, despite having two good fixtures, maybe turn into Chelsea territory for a lot of people over the last four if you couldn't quite fit one in.
Yeah, I am still pretty bullish on Ekatike. I kind of wish I had him, because I think he's going to end up being a nice little differential. I mean, his ownership's never going to be zero, but he's got the attacking upside there. Like, he is explosive. We've seen that several times this season. And although he's been very frustrating as of late, he's still getting the chances. And famous last words, but I don't think, or I don't feel like he is another Darwin Núñez where he's just going to continue to underperform on that data. I think there is a real striker there that is capable of finishing his dinner. I think if you've got him, you hold on and you hope that whilst other people get frustrated and maybe don't look at even buying him because he's not been great recently in terms of actual output, I think now is the perfect time to hopefully spike that big differential haul out of him. And I actually would be pretty confident that over the next 4 game weeks, he ends up being one of the top scoring strikers in the game. So not easy to get to. I'm not going to rip apart my team to buy him because, like you said, it's very dependent on the formation you're playing right now. A lot of us have Haaland and a mid-price striker, whether that's João Pedro or Thiago. And I think if you've got João Pedro, unless you've got the money in the bank to upgrade, most people would be going across to Thiago pretty soon anyway. So Ekatike is going to be ignored by the vast majority. And I think that's an opportunity for anyone who does have him or have a very easy route to him. Frustrating recently, sure, but that doesn't mean he can't score points in the next 4, and I think he will.
Yeah, keep it quiet, Hugo. That was what we were trying. That's what we decided to do. Just keep it quiet over these 2 games, and now, Hugo, now you strike. All right, cool. Let's move on to the 1 week punt update. Last week, João Pedro got me 7 points. When I got notification after 4 minutes, I texted you, said, I have opened a beer, I can confirm. So I was probably an absolute disaster, but didn't quite turn out. You went for Cole Palmer, which was, again, absolutely fine if you'd gone there and captained him and so on and so forth. But it didn't quite work out. So it puts us at 156 to 130, 26-point gap. You've used one of your jokers on Mr. Gabriel last week. But yeah, this week you've gone route 1, haven't you?
Yeah, very much so. We're running out of game weeks, so that was kind of my tactic earlier on in the season. I'm keeping back all the big boys, and I'm just going to string them out week after week now and go for the absolute prime candidate each week. With that in mind, I'm holding back a couple of the big boys, but I am going with Thiago against Burnley. So fingers crossed, it's got to be hat-trick time. I I haven't picked up a hat trick this season in my team yet, and I haven't hit many big scores in this either. So come on, Thiago, do the job, please, for once.
Yeah, be good
I
to have
think
one
it's,
of
I think it's
those.
fine.
Good to have one of those. I don't know. I've gone for Watkins just because I like I feel like from watching Wolves over the last couple of weeks, I personally, and we'll talk about this later on, I personally, for reasons unknown, sat through Palace versus Wolves, and I did notice that if Mateta was around, I felt that he would have had a field day against Wolves, and I feel like they're very vulnerable to down the middle. Those Buenos and those Gomez's have got nothing on strikers. I just feel like Watkins could have one of those generational 3-goal, 2-assist hauls against Wolves. I don't know why. It was just one of those things that kind of tickled me. I did really like. I do really like Thiago. I was very close to putting Dango here, but I just thought, yeah, let's just go with it. In fact, I was quite close to just putting Thiago in as well and having the first week where we both matched. But I thought that's just no fun, is it? It's just be like, I agree with you.
That might happen later on in the year, though, because there will be double game weeks where we have to. Yeah,
need to start putting out some more. Yeah, so some more of the big boys because we have been quite esoteric thus far. All right, captain this week, Sam. I really want to hear your views on this one because I'm a bit unsure. I've got on Bruno at the moment because reasoning being that Palace are playing in their Conference League playoff Thursday night, isn't it? I was thinking, well, okay, Bruno, whose underlying data, as we all know, is fairly good. No DEFCON anymore, though. Is kind of at home against them. United have been doing right. But then watching them against Everton on last night and also speaking to United fans, they were still thinking, the problem is that a lot of the big games that Carrick did win, yeah, that was all fine and dandy because there's a lot more space. When it's a low block, it does feel like Carrick ball doesn't quite work. And yes, there's been a few comments that Bruno is definitely kind of seeming a little bit fatigued at the moment. But I don't know, that kind of always going to be what it's going to be. Whereas you've got Haaland away at Leeds. Obviously, online data is quite good. Defensively, especially at home, they're very good. And then you've got Thiago in the mix as well, as you mentioned earlier on, away at Burnley. The graphic is slightly wrong there. Copy and pasting during lunch break, sorry. But yeah, I think it's between Haaland and Bruno for me because I'm an EO coward. But yeah, I mean, what's your lean at the moment?
Oh, I really wish I was more helpful on this because I'm very much in your camp where it could go either way. My captaincy is also currently on Bruno. And the way I'm going to try and process this is way through the pros and cons of both. Bruno losing DEFCON, I think, is actually something that won't be valued in the way that it should be. I think that's a pretty big dent to what Bruno is as an FPL pick. Having him at 40% DEFCON hit rate is very, very handy. That is a good couple of points more on the baseline of a number of the game weeks where we needed him. That's going to be a dent. And at home, I think, again, very unlikely he hits DEFCON. I don't know about the burnt out thing. I watched the Everton game. I agree that he was fairly anonymous. He did not have his best game. But I don't think it was that he was burnt out. I think it was more that the team structure wasn't able to find him in those pockets of space as often. I don't think it's because of his lack of effort or lack of energy. I think it's the role that he's being asked to play for Carrick is much less of an all action. I'm going to be all around the pitch at all times. It's very much I'm staying in this zone of influence. You find me and the ball will ping off of me into other corners, however I see fit. That didn't really work out for him against Everton. Will it work out against Palace? My gut is saying yes, because I think they'll find more spaces against a team that have lost their key defender, that haven't looked great recently anyway. It might be Glasner's last match again in the Europa Conference League if they go out the way that things are going, and they've only got a couple of days rest between then and Man United as well, whereas United will have the full week to rest, get ready, go again. I think I'm very slightly leaning towards Bruno. However, on the flip side, Erling Haaland away at Leeds, where he was born, the bit of narrative bias there, but his non-penalty XGI is way higher. Leeds' defensive data middling. It's fine. And I think I've seen a few people talking about the fact that the Leeds system might actually be quite good to keep him quiet, and they'll be able to put a man on him and they'll be able to sort out the rest individually. But given that they're now playing with the split strikers, I think Leeds are going to struggle to contain both. And we might see another situation like game week 27, where Haaland isolates one centre back rather than gets dealt with by two, and then it leaves space for the other one. So he might have more of a creative brief again, but that doesn't mean he can't get attacking returns. His shot volume has gone quite significantly downhill, though, since they've switched the system and since Semenyo's come in, since Marmoush has started getting more minutes. He's nowhere near the same sort of volume in terms of big chances created, in terms of penalty box touches. All of that is down. So the chances of a big haul for Haaland have gone downhill, but it is still Erling Haaland, and all of those chances are still much higher than most. All of that being said, I think I'm like 55-45 towards Bruno right now. I think the home fixture, Palace playing in the midweek, that might be enough to sway me. But I could hear new information that could swing me the other way. So by all means, throw it my way, because I'm all ears.
It's Rosa Finn. I mean, I was looking at like home versus away XG, which is obviously laden with buts to try to help with this. And United the 5th best at home for XG, City at 6th best for away XG, and stuff like narratives. Yes, okay. I should obviously there's only one example, but I triple captained Haaland at home versus Leeds, leading into that, narrative. Got a lovely 6 points to show for it. So I mean, I think that you're right that losing DEFCON is pretty bad for Bruno. But we said at the start of the year, didn't we, about assist rule, where a ball in the box means that you get an assist almost regardless, effectively. It does kind of help Bruno's case, obviously both penalties. It's almost like we've got a lot of variety going on in the midfield picks that people are also kind of bringing in, and maybe as well we may see a swingy week when it comes to captaincy, which is kind of, as we said last week. Yeah, you wanted variety. Are you not entertained? There's going to be definitely a cohort of people who aren't very happy when it comes to when we're back on Sunday, and a cohort of people are going to be very happy when we're back on Sunday. I just worry a little bit, Sam, about both teams, who, in terms of their attacking sort of patterns at the moment. United seems to be really struggling against low blocks, according to United fans, and City do seem to kind of have one good half, one bad half, be like the epitome of the Jekyll Hyde sort of team. I don't know. I just do quite like the idea of what you said about that kind of new system potentially being quite difficult for Leeds to deal with.
Yeah.
Versus United, for all of Carrick at the wheel sort of thing. There's a reason he didn't last distance at Middlesbrough. You've only got so long there, haven't you? But Bruno has probably a few more routes to points than Haaland, and if Haaland does have that creative brief, that's tricky. I kind of just feel like it's kind of marginally. I think Bruno, but I think that's very much the floor pick versus Haaland being the ceiling pick. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm concerned about that ceiling. Like, every now and then he will get the haul because it is Erling Haaland, right? But is the ceiling as consistent or as likely as it used to be if they are playing this new system? That's my worry. Like, are we imagining he's still the exact same FPL pick he was at the start of the year, when he was the isolated target man and everything went through him? Now 50% goes through him, and the other 50 goes through either Semenyo or Marmoush in that second forward role. And as I said, his shot volumes are coming down, and those big chances are coming down. It's a smallish sample, but it is directly correlated with the new system. So he is explosive. He'll never not be, but is he less explosive than we'd want him to be? I guess that's the question I'm trying to answer in my mind.
It all probes at the heart of this season as well, a little bit, where there's for all the premiums are stuttering. There's a lot of kind of, there's a good shout in the chat about like Ekatike versus West Ham, for example, which would be a great road pick. I just look at it and just kind of my EO brain goes into effect where I'm like, it's fine owning him. I'm happy owning him, and I've got no problem if someone does look at Ekatike, does look at Thiago, and just if they've got bigger cojones than me, just goes, I'm going to go with one of those two. For me, it is between the two of them. I think both will probably be around above 100% EO. For those who do care, the analytics is kind of mostly behind Bruno. I think it's kind of 0.6, 0.7 in Bruno's favour. Yeah, it's close. I think we'll see where we land come Friday. I'm bust on Bruno at the moment, and it may be that the longer the week goes on, the more I just kind of think, I'll just kind of stick with that. But yeah, you kind of you make some good points, not enough to sway me away. Obviously, I know you're there as well, but not enough to sway me away from leaving it on Bruno as it stands. But I do quite like it, and maybe there's obviously all this sort of qualitative stuff that comes in. So I bought Semenyo, I also own Haaland, so maybe having two attacking players for Tissy and then effectively having two for Bruno is how I square that away in my mind. That sounds incredibly stupid, I know, but that's sort of way my brain works when I think about this.
No, makes sense. I like a comment in the chat saying I wish we could go back to the days where we didn't even give a thought to effective ownership on these things. That would be fun.
Me too. I wish I could scrub my retinas and scrub my neurons, which knew this.
We've opened Pandora's box now, though, haven't we? It's too late. Once you know,
I write a strongly worded letter to Ragaboli Mark about that, and yeah. Take up with your MP if you are worried about this. Okay. Our teams for this week, then. There we are. Oh, Sam, your subs are all hidden. Is this some sort of bench wankery?
Not sure what's happened there. Sorry, guys. I'll walk through it. You can kind of tell from the kit colours, I suppose. In goal, I've got Kelleher away at Burnley. Easy choice, sorted. I'll be playing him all the way through to game week 31. In defence, I've got currently 4 at the back. The plan is not to play all 4 of them, but I haven't made my transfers yet. Gabriel, Timber, both at home to Chelsea. Anderson at home to Spurs, and Munoz away at Man United. Out of those two, I actually think it's a fairly close call, but I might marginally prefer starting Anderson over Munoz if I kept Munoz. Into my midfield, currently going with 4. The plan is to end up with 5. Bruno Fernandes currently with the armband. Rice, Rodgers, Anderson. That's Elliot Anderson starting in midfield right now. Enzo Fernandez is first on the bench and is almost certainly being sold this week. Up front, Haaland and Thiago, they're going nowhere anytime soon, and I will hopefully be able to keep them through to wildcarding. So no moves in my forward line. On my bench, like I said, Dubravka, Enzo, Alderete, who I won't be playing until game week 31, and Mark Giu, who is absolutely useless. So, transfers. If I was moving on Sunday, it would have been Enzo and Rice and Munoz to Wirtz and Burmo and Van Dijk. I had the exact money to do so, and if Wirtz had gotten through that game unscathed and looked half decent, I would have probably made those moves. That didn't happen. Enzo went down and Van Dijk went up, so I can no longer do that. The route that is currently open to me as of right this second, but won't be by tomorrow morning due to an Mbeumo price rise, is Rice and Enzo directly to Mbeumo and Wirtz. That's 2 free transfers rather than the hit. I could also take the hit to get rid of Timber for Van Dijk. I'm not sure that's quite worth it. Then basically, there are 4 players that could be sold, and I'm going to sell at least 2 of them. Those 4 players are Rice, Enzo, Munoz, and Timber. I will sell one of the defenders at most, and I will sell at least one of the midfielders. That midfielder definitely being sold is Enzo, and then I might sell Rice for a second midfielder, and I might get rid of Munoz or Timber. So, like I said, I think if Wirtz is fit, Wirtz comes in, and then it's a question mark over, do I really need to get rid of Rice yet? Arguably not, but if I can get someone like an Mbermo, then that's attacking quite a lot of upside, and I do back him to do really well. It also removes a blank game weeker. And in defense, same question with Van Dijk versus Timber and Munoz. Is it worth doing right now? Quite possibly. And sadly, if I get priced out tonight, I will have to compromise on one of those positions. It will have to be, instead of Mbermo, maybe Wilson or Dango, or all of that. I'm happy to take my first -4. I'm fully open to that this week. It's just whether or not the combinations work for me. So yeah. Any suggestions?
Yeah, I think I think that kind of sit rep you've given me kind of works very well. Enzo has to go. One of Munoz and Timber probably kind of has to go to upgrade Enzo to one of the more pricey midfielders. I don't think there's going to be much kind of love lost between you and Timber. From watching the game, the Palace game, I kind of was very happy to move Munoz on and just kind of put him down as a misstep. I was happy to kind of get rid of that. But then again, the fixtures aren't that bad for Palace. So if he does hold on, he does kind of hold on. I think I'd play him if you end up with 3 at the back. Gabriel, Virgil, and then one of Anderson or Munoz. I probably would lean towards playing for Munoz and hoping for him to turn into again that kind of upside panther that we love. And Enzo has to go. I did kind of I do like that Verts Bumo thing. It's just I think that you're probably going to end up doing Verts or Bumo plus one of the cheaper midfielders, aren't you? If you're going to be taking it that way and go back to the 3-5-2, I don't think it's going to be too problematic to hold on to Timber. I don't think it's too bad to be holding on to Munoz for a moment and then potentially selling him on in 31, or if you make a move next week. I think the most upside for you probably is going to sit in finding a configuration where Enzo goes for a higher point potential player, and if you can do that, you got nothing in the bank, right?
I've got 2.8 million in the bank.
Oh, you got 2.8 million. Okay, fine. Well, Enzo to
like I said,
Verts.
I can right now, as of today, get Verts and Mbermo for Rice and Enzo with my 2 frees. Exactly.
Can you do, and so by extension you can do Enzo to Verts and then Munoz or Timber to Virgil easily, can't you? Yeah. I think you've got to wait. You've really got to wait until the weekend, unfortunately.
Sadly, yes.
Let that go. I even though I do like Bumo as an idea, and I just said to you a few weeks ago, like I had every intention of bringing Bumo in. At the moment, I think that's just one to just let go. I think information is key here. If you want to take the hit, like I know this year I've been very anti-hits, but selling Timber, Rice and Enzo for more impactful players, or Munoz and over Timber for more impactful players could be the way to make it work. Making too. I feel like in your situation, you really need to be chasing that. Could you still, when you get to Friday? I mean, even if you end up buying Hill or even buying Canate almost at the back, could you make that work? So if you did kind of Timber to Canate, Rice and Enzo for Bumo and Verts.
If I sell Timber instead of Munoz, I can wait all week and still do Mbermo, Verts, and Van Dijk. I've got the money there.
Okay. So you've still got a route to the A list. I'm sorry. I should have been.
No, that's fine.
It's one of those things. It's difficult when you're
a little bit less expensive, and I honestly I'm glad to hold on to Timber than Munoz. I still think there's something there for Timber, and it might just be me wishful thinking, but I still think there's opportunity there more so.
There is going to be a big haul in Timber. There is one. I did not see that in Munoz. Okay. It's
But
going to be tricky.
I'm locked out of the ideal 3 right now if I sold Munoz.
But you don't mind you, but I mean, I'm a little bit kind of like I like Bumo, but I'm not potentially kind of saying he's a must. Can you do Bumo Wilson? I don't know why I'm saying that in a German accent. Can you do Bumo Wilson and Van Dijk
Yes.
for Rice, Enzo, and Munoz?
Comfortably, yeah.
Okay.
As soon as you drop any one of those 3 players down to the cheaper alternative, this is easy.
Okay. I think that probably be the one that I'd like, because with Wilson you've got the talisman. With Bumo, you've got a player who's within that sort of, as long as we find out he's fit, as I said earlier on, then I think you've got a player who does have kind of over the next 4 all those positives that United players do give you, and then you pick up Van Dijk, who's a good defensive pick. Broadly, you got to wait till Friday, I'm afraid, mate. To see how it goes from there.
It sucked. I was so ready to just move early for once this year, and I never do it, as you all know. And then Verts pulls out last minute. I had the game on ready to watch Verts and like get all the confirmation bias I needed. And I was like, wait, why is he sat on the bench? And then I was like, oh no, it's happened. And then Burma obviously goes off with cramp as well. So anyway, I'll definitely be waiting until Friday for some news. Hopefully I can get to them, but we will see. Your team, I think, will be quicker because you've already made your moves, haven't you?
Yeah, done already. Semenyo and Hill, in for Munoz and Enzo. 0.6 million in the bank as well. I've been at 0.0 for a while. I'm fairly happy with it. At the back, in goal, Raya. At the back, Hill against Sunderland at home. I think that I'm playing him over Anderson against Spurs. I think Chow and Gabriel, and in midfield, in fact I've got the most like template front 7 you could ever imagine. I am literally sucking at the tea of live FPL's template, which makes me feel kind of sick on one hand, but on the other, if they all go off at once, they're all great players, then I'm going to be laughing. Rogers, Semenyo, Rice, and Bruno, and up front, Thiago, Haaland, Ekitike. Yes, Ekitike, I'm sure is differential, but for me, his templates, he's been in my team since forever. Look, I mean, I think that I was just pretty happy to just get Semenyo in, just bet against what I said last week about a bit of blanchitis maybe affecting some. Like most of them were looking at Semenyo. I haven't even bothered asking you why you're not looking at Semenyo, because I know the answer. But most of them were looking at Semenyo because he blanks in 3 weeks. The EO is quite high, and I think that the gain there shouldn't be capped too high. If that makes sense. Like there's not going to be a run on Semenyo, I don't think. Definitely keeping a closer eye on the cheaper mids we spoke about earlier, when it comes to Rice, because obviously I think one of he or Semenyo needs to go in 31 to make everything work. And if I've got to do that move earlier, then so be it. I'm more than happy to. A high value team with a high value front 7 at the back. I'm backing James Hill to match, or at least in terms of the value, commensurately provide the value that Virgil van Dijk provides. Chow against Everton. We'll see what happens. We've rested tonight. Main question for me really is the captaincy. I'm not really too sure what I'm going to be doing. I'm fairly happy to just play Hill against Sunderland as it is. Against Anderson at home to Spurs. That was another one that I was a bit iffy on, but I think that's the way I'll do it. I think the review agrees with me, but we'll see.
Yeah, shiny new toy. You've just brought him in. Go take him out for a test drive. I think that's fine. I mean, I'm very jealous of your front 7. And also, it is worth noting, it's not impossible that Man City don't blank in game week 31. It is unlikely, but if they do somehow find themselves with a fixture that week, you are going to be laughing, and everyone else is going to be playing catch up very quickly. So fair play. You're in a unique situation, a very powerful team, and you'll be back in the top 100k in no time, I'm sure.
Yeah, let's see. But I'm happy with that, and fully intend to roll this now until 31 if I can. But we'll wait and see.
Yeah, I think so. And we've just hit the 90-minute mark, so I think we're pretty much wrapping up the pod today. But one thing I will say before officially exiting today is Southampton won 5-0. 5-0, guys. So
Blimey.
Just saying, sorry, QPR fans. Had to.
Well, you're in a good mood.
I am in a good mood. So no matter what happens in FPL, it's all gravy. Anyway, thank you all so much for listening. I do apologise if you're a QPR fan there, by the way. We were and are Who Got the Assist. On Blue Sky, we are Who Got the Assist, all written out one word. FPL Pricey for me. X, it's WGTA_FPL. Again, I'm just FPL Pricey on there. And on YouTube, it's Who Got the Assist, all written out one word. And again, I'm over there at FPL Pricey. If you did enjoy today's pod, I would really appreciate it. I'm sure Tom would too. If you could give us a follow on those social channels, give the pod a 5-star rating wherever you're listening. And of course, if you're watching along on YouTube, leave a like, hit subscribe if you're new around here as well. All of those things really do help us out.
Yes, thank you very much. All right. So we're back next Sunday due to quick turnarounds 1st of March. Game 29 is a midweek. And Wilson holiday on Monday. Those Peppa Pig shows at Butlins will not watch themselves, people. I've got to be there to do it. So it all really fits the timing, fortunately. We hope as you think about the midfield picks to gear up to the blank. Have a great weekend, and we'll speak to you at the end of it.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?